Well, welcome to the show, everyone.
Welcome to the show.
I'm one of your
I'm
hosts.
one of your hosts.
Kyle. I'm an idiot.
I'm an idiot.
Nice. Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe, not being mimicked.
Okay, I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and once again, thanks for watching, thanks for finding us, and thanks for my viewers. And you can contact the show on Twitter and Instagram. Check out the Patreon for some great deals. There's some new specials coming up. Today we're going to talk about a horror movie from 1997. I think it's Guillermo del Toro's first movie?
First American movie.
First American movie.
He had done, I believe, The Devil's Backbone and Kronos, which is one of my personal favorites. Yeah. But this is Mimic.
All right, so what's going on?
So entomologist Dr. Susan Tyler has created a genetically engineered insect to wipe out cockroaches carrying a dangerous disease.
Yeah.
3 years later, she discovers those genetically created insects, the Judas breed, have evolved to survive and are out to destroy another animal, humans. Yeah, so it is Del Toro's first American film.
Yeah.
And this one is one that it's very obvious he doesn't have his creative control in it.
No, right. When I first saw this in 1987 working the video store, I was like, oh my god, this is like Seven with monsters. But it's a little more different. Seven, there's nothing really lit, nothing really important, but there's good lighting for this, like yellows and gels, and very convincing cinematography for this. This is actually probably the third time I've ever seen this movie, and it's been over 20 years since I've seen the movie. But it has a pacing that irritates me, because, you know, horror movies, you want to go fast, fast, fast. But like Guillermo del Toro takes his time, especially crafting a narrative.
Part of that is that this movie is, more than I think any other Del Toro film, is so exposition heavy.
Oh, God.
There's a ton of exposition. It almost feels like Mimic is a sequel to a movie about a dangerous disease. You know, like the first movie was about the disease, and then the second movie is about the creatures that have come out of it.
Yep.
And that's where I think the film really falters, is that there's so much happening in the movie that's crammed into 2 hours that I feel like, I don't know, there's got to be some better way to do it.
How do you cram it and it feels slow, too?
Exactly. Yeah, there's so much happening, and yet I'm kind of wondering what's going to happen next. Like, when's it going to happen? Part of that comes down to, the film opens up with probably something that interested me more than anything else, which was this disease that's killing children, and them trying to find a cure for it.
Yep.
And I think that's the area where I was like, ooh, that's interesting, that's curious, but it's brushed over so quick that we don't get to see how the characters react to it, and a lot of it is done in kind of like postscript, like when she comes across her old teacher, and he says, I have 2 grandchildren alive because of you, so how can I be upset at you for this? Yeah. And I think that scene was really powerful to me, because it reminded me the stakes of like why they did what they did, why they created this incredibly, you know, this was a stupid call to like make this creature. Yeah, but they had to do it to save lives, and it's like, you know, the greater good and the lesser evil.
It's almost, because I haven't read the book, it's based on a book, but it's almost like you want to read the book to see what is really focused on, because I'm sure that's a little more focused in the book.
What I've been told is that it's very loosely adapting, so I don't know how much of this is actually from the story. And so I assume that the general bones are there, and maybe this film has more of an emphasis on the creature effects just because you've got someone who knows how to handle them. I think that's maybe the big addition. I don't know, though. I'm pretty lost.
So, like with a lot of Guillermo del Toro movies, he likes to run parallel. So obviously we're talking mimic, but you also have a side character, a little boy, who likes to mimic also. And that is a vessel to the big reveal. You know, obviously we know it doesn't take much. You like to talk about the big secret in Outland, but here the big secret, oh my God, yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah. But it's not shocking, I guess, no.
No, but it's an effective titillating. Teasing you a little bit about making sure, wait till the characters discover it.
That's true, yeah. And what's great about the film, my favorite thing about the film, is because there's so much happening, and even though you kind of know where it's going to go, there's all these avenues that could be explored further.
Yes.
You know, we have this deadly disease, we have this Judas breed, and then all of a sudden we just have this guy get murdered and dragged into the sewers, and you're like, what is happening in this movie? And I think that's what's kind of, you know, as much as you know where it's kind of going, it's pretty interesting in how it chooses to get there. The how is pretty interesting to me.
But I understand why the monsters have to be monster sakes, even though they are limited creatures. But of course, creatures and habitats are bound to kill. But they don't really get a motivation why. Ours is just to kill sake, but you don't give a reason. Are they just manic or something like that, or they're just taking over or something like this? Obviously they want to visually say they're colonizing and they're trying to take over, but you don't really get an authentic motivation for what they're doing.
Yeah, like scientific motive. Maybe not the creatures choosing a motive, but like what scientifically, what in their state are they trying to do by eradicating humans, by taking these humans and by doing what they're doing. There may not need to be a specific character motive in this, but they are kind of a plague of monsters, if you will. I want to know, why is the plague acting this way? Yeah, that's a good point.
But Guillermo del Toro is really effective on making a movie.
Mm-hmm.
I love all the choices of the shots.
Mm-hmm.
I do like the whole neon lighting of how you lit everything, but keep it dark. We're going to keep it almost compact. You almost feel like the city is overbearing themselves.
Yeah.
People are overbearing. We're not showing very much. And you always saying the grimy, the filthy. We love this in the 90s of everything looking grimy and filthy. And even though the exposition tells you it's a grimy, filthy city, they show it to you as well.
My theory is that Hollywood was run by the Dawn dish soap industry in the 90s, and they were subconsciously trying to get you to buy soap.
But this is why I think it's a heavy influence from the movie Seven from David Fincher, where the city is
the credits are very similar. Like the film has it has a general feeling like we really like Seven. We're gonna make a Monster 7, And the film actually was one of, I believe, 6 movies that was outlined in this piece in the Telegraph called Harvey Scissorhands. Harvey Weinstein was a producer on the film.
Oh, God,
and this film has been notorious as one of 6 movies that he destroyed by recutting, reshaping. And we have to remember, Del Toro was not Guillermo del Toro at that point. He was a director who came to America, who made a couple other films, but this was his first foray into we're going to make you a star director.
Right, when you're a vessel for the production.
And this film was destroyed, reassembled for a theatrical cut. I saw the theatrical cut back when it came out, and I recently I watched the director's cut for this discussion we're having. And the director's cut, I remember very little of that theatrical cut. I looked up the differences, and it feels like the director's cut molds the story into more of a mystery than the original cut of the film.
That's where Del Toro is far more effective, has a little more mysterious component, like Pan's Labyrinth. What is,
or I saw a lot of comparisons with this in Crimson Peak, where there's that ghost story where it's we kind of know what we're gonna find out, but how we get there is really interesting. And I think that's maybe his best strength is, look at the film that he won Best Picture with, Shape of Water.
Yeah.
Is we know where that movie's kind of going the whole time. But how he gets there is really captivating.
Well, how we wait for the characters to get there, too. Mm-hmm. And it's very hard to, it's called dramatic irony when the audience knows what's going on for the story, but the characters don't. Mm-hmm. And entertain and keep it movie entertaining when we all know. It's kind of hard to do, because we're waiting for them to discover, but we understand, for even Mimic, when Mina Cerverno slowly getting the kernels of what's going on.
Yeah. Having that kind of, and again, the how is interesting. Figuring out how they're going to get to the point in the movie we know we're going to get to works really well. And I think maybe that's where Del Toro and Fincher can have a kinsmanship, is that, Del Toro disowned this film after his numerous clashes with the studio, and Fincher did the same with his Alien movie, Alien 3. So they've got early career problems of having their movies taken away. But this is a heavy
influence in Alien. I mean, obviously you dissect a little baby alien, so you got that gross part. You got him in the tunnels, and then you got him a colony of aliens, and so there's a lot of stuff that we influenced this movie.
Like all great sci-fi, again, we're taking things we really like from other movies and kind of molding them in a different way and seeing them through a different lens. And I think that's kind of on display here. I like that there's kind of this forebodingness of, what does the kid call him, Mr.
Funny Shoes?
Shoes, yeah. So I like that there's that element, but then there's also the Judas breed, and then when there's when are these parts going to come together, and they kind of mold and they kind of do, and it's not fully successful.
Of course,
but it does captivate.
They dress like a noir character.
Yeah,
I love.
When I saw it, I was
I always love
this.
Yeah, I always love that they dress like a noir character that you almost can insert into Dark City.
Yeah. Well, after seeing Dark City and then going back to this, I'm there it is. I also thought, we had our first on-screen Del Toro and Norman Reedus team up.
Oh no, yeah, Norman makes an appearance in this.
When he showed up in the film, I was like, Daryl? And I thought that was kind of fun because, again, he worked together with him on Blade 2 just a few years after this. So having that kind of... lots of people that Del Toro goes back to, I think.
Yeah, and it also features a very young baby Josh Brolin.
Mm-hmm.
And then the supporting role, I'm going to murder her name, Alex Kroner, right?
Karamazov?
Karamazov,
Like that?
yeah.
She was actually the star of Mimic 2. Just so you know.
Yes, but both Josh and her make an appearance in Night Watch with Ian McGregor.
Okay.
So and that's a very dark movie too. We don't, in the late '90s, we didn't know how to change light bulbs in movies.
That's true.
But right, there's a very dark theme to movies. So if you like this movie, but check out Night Watch as well.
Mm. See, every time
Not the Russian movie, the other one.
Every time I saw Josh Brolin, I was like, man, if Thanos can't stop these guys, if Cable can't take down the Menace, then who are we to control him?
Because we know where he came, right? Yeah.
It's kind of funny. I mean, Josh Brolin is that thing. He's iconically in so many movies nowadays, and he's good guys, he's bad guys, he's there, and we just see babyface Josh Brolin, who looks about the same as he did in Goonies.
In the '90s, he did this character where I'm too cool for my job and I just want to screw around.
Yeah, but I believed it. I believed he was too cool. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, there's one of those things that we did in the '90s. It's very stuck in the late '90s, a very foreboding, dark city. The city is a character that's dragging you down, and depression, and of course we're going to incorporate scientific genetic monsters involved in this as well.
That's true, yeah. I think there's something we said about the amount of characters in the movie. There's some good ones I really liked, and there's some bad ones I just wish had been written out of the film. I didn't really care. Yeah, I did not care for Northam, Dr. Peterman. I think part of that is the writing for the character. He just doesn't feel like he has enough to do.
Other than the big reveal when he's on a piano and he stops piano play, it's like...
Yeah. I liked Charles S. Dutton, but because of the number of characters, we didn't get to have much time with him. Giancarlo Giannini was great, but again, just so many characters that we didn't get to spend enough time with them. No. F. Murray Abraham's essentially a glorified cameo at times. He worked because his character, you knew from the outset what his character was meant to do, and then he disappears from the movie. And that's okay. He's a great actor, giving us a little boost, and then getting out of there. But there were some people that spent too much time in this movie where I just did not care about them at all.
Right, and I think it needed a little more Mina Samaro.
Yeah, she's great. And again, we get that Alex Karamazov, if I'm saying it correctly, who is in Mimic 2. Because she doesn't get much to do in this first movie, when she appears in Mimic 2 and she's our star, I'm kind of like, okay. And again, she's got about as much development in that film as she does in this one. There's too many characters, and I feel like I have a way to solve two of the film's problems with Simple Act. Too many characters, not enough forward momentum murder. Murder some of the useless characters.
Right.
Murder them more frequently, get them out of the movie, and then you've got a little bit more action, a little bit more gore for the gore hounds, but then you also thin out the character list because there's some people that just don't contribute to the movie.
Because the essence of the movie is how are these monsters able to walk around the earth, walk among people and not be discovered, and how the little boy has figured out and nobody else has figured out. That is supposed to be the core of the whole movie.
And that's brushed over so
And that's
much.
brushed over
so thin.
So thin. And then if you investigate that, I think maybe that's what the book is concentrating on, because the little boy talks about he follows people's shoes. And like we know from Shawshank Redemption, people don't pay attention to other people's shoes, but the little boy does. And that's how he kind of figured everything out. And so I think that should be a little more developed, a little more the mystery component of how these predators not being caught yet, rather than having a big reveal of colonization. So it's something that you have them closing in on their preys and everything. It's almost like a predator, and then you want to feel sorry for these characters I don't really feel sorry for.
Yeah, and
other than the kids.
That's where the film's biggest struggle comes into play, because as much as we say that there's too much happening in this movie, it's all pretty fascinating. Like, the story is fascinating.
Oh,
the concept really works, but it's just how we're executing it, and maybe this might have been part of that studio interference as well, where they wanted to focus more on getting to the meat of it. And maybe I wanted to focus on this is a captivating story. It's maybe less of a horror film as a story than the film ended up forced into, because we've got to fit genres so that we can get people to watch it. And so it's that.
But you
thing
did that
contributes
noir
to
of
it.
walking the streets and all the noirs of a busy interaction city, of bustling and everything, and then you have like, how are these monsters able to fit in so well? And that's the whole point of it. Evolution is supposed to you encapsulate your environment. That's the whole point of the book, right?
Yeah.
And they just don't investigate it much more. And I think it's far more interesting if they did it that way.
Well, and that's the
Little
frustrating
more
thing
noir,
of,
less
in
horror.
general is that not only do they do that with this movie, they do it in the sequel, and then in the other sequel.
Okay.
Both sequels to this movie, which I believe are both direct-to-video.
I'm learning that there is a sequel to this.
Oh, there's a
Okay.
whole trilogy, baby.
Oh
and
my
I've
God.
seen them all three in the past month, and I can tell you one thing's for certain: the second film is basically the same thing as the first film,
Oh, we're
and the
recycling.
third
Oh,
film
God.
is I don't even know what. It's awful. Anyway, but second and third one both deal with this. Like, there's a guy in a, we're seeing this guy in a suit, and it's like, oh wait, is that a creature moving around above land? Like, we're doing the same thing with the most important aspect instead of exploring it more. And it's like we've got this really cool idea. This is a movie's concept, like conceptually. I don't know of any other movies that really, really did what this movie did. But then the second and third one, instead of choosing to delve in and pick and choose things to look at,
Yes.
we have the same problem.
Just go gory.
We go gory and we just go with like, let's just do the same thing again. And it's like, man, this could have been a great trilogy of movies if the studios had let Del Toro make his movie, and then if Del Toro had focused on kind of this interesting concept and how he could use this to tell kind of his dark fairy tale sensibilities.
Yeah.
It's a movie I almost want him to go back himself and remake.
Almost, right.
You know?
I think this just, you just said the word I was thinking. Remake it.
Yeah.
Remake it a little more noir, less little horror, a little more a mystery component to this, even though we know, we're waiting for the characters to discover. But make it more interesting of how they understand, the shoes.
Well, and the other thing that
If you're talking about shoes for the movie, make about the shoes.
I thought if we actually had looked at this film similar to another film, one of my favorite books of all time, which was Stephen King's The Stand. Now that, if you don't know about the story of that, it's 1,100-page tome
It's a
that
content.
starts with a plague that wipes out 99% of the world. That's just like the first quarter of the book.
Yeah.
And so like when they adapted that, they didn't adapt that for film. It's been adapted twice, and both times as a limited series. And that's what this maybe needs. This needs like a 4-episode limited series on like a Netflix, something where you could binge if you want, but you could also view it outside of the fact where the first episode was just all about the disease. And then they solved that at the end of the first
I
episode.
agree. You have to
Like,
really
you could
emphasize
take your time and break down every portion of this really convoluted story if you give it more time, and then you can invest in the characters more.
I always say, edit and cut back. I'm going to go different with Mimic. You need to expand a little more. You need to more develop about why the awfulness of the pandemic. You need to explain why the city is killing everybody, literally killing everybody, and everybody's depressed, and nobody can change a light bulb. And then you want to interject the monsters and have a really overall a nihilistic point of view that I think they want to put in the movie.
Yeah.
And
More
what you-
often than not, I'm the guy who says we don't need a 10-episode series for this story. You can
And
tell
both of
this
us
in
are
a
craving,
movie.
yes, you
and
need
both
it.
of us are saying it. I'm the guy who said Dune could be one movie. I still agree on that.
Yeah.
But like this is one where this movie needs to be even just a 4-hour miniseries. It doesn't need to be a 10-episode or
agree,
5-season thing. Just 4 episodes where you can spend time in each hour slowly adding layers and then using that as a lens to shine it on your characters, because this film doesn't get time to shine to the characters, and I don't know who to blame for it. I'm mad.
I know, because it's kind of centered on Mina Sabaro, and she is the barometer. She's the gravity, and she's actually the most bright character in this movie, even though she's responsible for a lot of the damage in the movie. But you need to have, the characters around her help her, lift her up a little bit, rather than just dragging it down.
Yeah, we have a separation of so many characters moving in different directions that if there was a little bit more interplay, that I was just watching actually the scene where Jeremy Northam's character calls her and wants to tell her that she's pregnant. And it's like, that's the one character interaction you could have had, and they don't get to actually.
Why'd you do
get
that in the
moment.
bathroom?
Yeah.
That's the word you do in the bathroom. God
It's
dang
so
it.
weird.
Instead of just awkward fumbling in the water in the bathtub, and that's supposed to be the happy point of the life. But
Yeah, because there was definite interference from the studio, interference from the executive. Again, Del Toro wanted to cast Andre Braugher as her boyfriend, her husband in the film, but the studio, and specifically
We
Weinstein,
know who the
didn't
studio
want
is.
interracial relationships in the 90s movies because people weren't ready for it yet. Like there was interference from the get-go in this movie. And so that's why I think even the director's cut is a mess, because there is no, like, there wasn't a saving this in the editing bay, because the movie was not taken out of his hands in the editing bay. This movie was taken out of his hands from the scripting stage and messed with and moved along the whole way. Whereas, like, Alien 3, for example, the comparison there is an assembly cut of Alien 3 that is, like, reformed from basically David Fincher's vision of the film.
And
that assembly cut is amazing. Look at my episode down below for that.
But that's a little more simple story than
yeah, but that story was taken out of his hands in the editing bay.
Yeah.
You know, whereas, like, this one, like, was meddled with from get-go.
Yeah. And
that's the biggest problem with it, is that it's hard to save even the director's cut.
And it needs a remake.
Yep.
All right.
Netflix, we're calling you.
So, have you seen Mimic?
Yeah. Have you seen Mimic?
Have you seen Mimic?
Yeah. Have you seen Mimic?
Mimic?
Go ahead and let us know your comments down below. Is this your favorite film in the Mimic trilogy? If it's not, what's wrong with you? Let us know, though. I'd like to hear your thoughts if you completely
It makes me want to
disagree
wish
with me.
that we had still had more Mina Savaro movies, and we understand from Harvey Weinstein why that didn't happen. But
yeah, exactly. So
she's really good.
Don't forget, while you're down there checking out our thoughts on the film and giving us your thoughts on the film, like, subscribe. As Nick pointed out, look at those Patreon tiers as well.
Yes.
Like we mentioned, any person who joins the Patreon before the end of 2021 at any tier will get one Patreon selection regardless of the tier that you enter. If you do choose the $5 and up tier, though, you will be part of our regular rotation for those Patreon episodes. Yeah. You can join up with some of our many patrons and their choices for what we get to cover next.
You can make us watch Mimic 2. I just learned today that there's Mimic 2 and 3.
Oh, don't give them ideas. But yeah, take a look at all that options as well, and then don't forget to let us know. Our favorite stuff is reading comments from our guests. We love that kind of stuff because we like the conversation. Yeah. So once again, folks, you can find my film reviews, all 1,000 of them, over at goatfilmreviews.com.
And you can find my podcast, the St. Paul Filmcast, anywhere you find podcasts.
Anywhere you can find podcasts.